Good morning, YouTube. Zioku here, and I am going to talk about Murphy Faubourn, or G Murphy, as she is called in the community. She is a very interesting unit, being that the way she functions at E3 versus her overexalt is one of the biggest differences of any units in terms of how much damage output she can do. Before overexalt, her damage is good, but her supporting ability is better. But after overexalt, her damage is just insane. These are her wheels that she came out with, as well as her posse. But we'll go over her kit first, and then we'll look at her wheels, her posses, and then a few teams that she works well with. If you look at her stats here, her stats are kind of on the lower end. She is a chorus unit, meaning quote-unquote support. So she's designed to be a support in mind, but once you have her overexalt, she kind of flips a switch and becomes more of a insane DPS, one of the best DPSs in the game, if not the best DPS in the game, especially with that sacrifice follow-up. Just insane amount of damage, even though her actual stats here are pretty low. Some of her skills here will have a little bit of extra effect. Some of these extra effects are based on her Enlightens, and so when I go over the Enlightens, you'll see that bonus effect. Her strike deals basic amount of damage, gains 10 alias, draw 1 abyss hymn. This takes effect once per turn, so when you play strike, you can draw one of these, the abyss hymns, which is one of her best support cards in the game, but we'll go over that in a second. Defense is similar to the strike. Gain a basic amount of shield, 10 alias, draw 1 abyss hymn. So that effect can only take effect once per turn. And it doesn't matter if you do like strike, defense, the draw can only take effect once per turn. Title, what is this? Sacrament. She gets 50 alias, basically for every rouse. Murphy inflicts 50% of the damage she deals as sacrifice stacks on the target. At turn start, gain 1 stack of lifesteal. Lifesteal, each stack grants the next Princess of Delusions plus 20% birth ritual up to 5 stacks, which point the next Princess of Delusion damage count is doubled. So when you get enough life stacks, so 5 turns after you rouse, this is going to be doubled. Waltz of Lemoria. This card is just absolutely insane. It's such a powerful card, and one that you want to just play, and really you want to know what it does in each stance so you can maximize the value of using it in the different stances. So regardless of what stance you are in, gain key flare equal to 300% key flare regen, so you always get that key flare. And then triggered different effects based on the current stance. If you are in blue stance, this is where you want to play it the most. You want to try to use it in blue stance, unless you are doing your big burst turn. But you want to use it in blue stance to build up that tentacle damage. So when you're in blue stance, you gain 37 tentacle damage, and you generate a tentacle. So you want to generate those tentacles. Getting as many tentacles is ideal, plus increasing the tentacle damage is huge. If you are in white stance, normally, if you're playing the Leorian version, which I'll go over, your white stance is enough to block out all damage for the most part, just going into white stance. So you don't need the extra shields this gives when you use it in white stance. So when you use it in white stance, you gain 139 shield and retain 50% shield to the next turn. Interesting. You normally don't need that extra shield. If you do, use it in white stance. But what I would recommend is using this in blue stance, and then at turn end, go to white stance for the shield, if you don't need the excess shield. And then if you are in red stance, Raging Waves, you deal, so this becomes an offensive attack, deal 90 damage 5 times to the enemy with the highest HP, which enjoys a 75% tentacle damage bonus. So the more tentacle damage you have, the more this has been increasing it into blue stance, the more damage this is going to deal when you're in red stance. So you want to build up that tentacle damage, use it in red stance, and bam, you deal more damage. G. Murphy is a very, I wouldn't say very unique, lots of characters scale, but she just keeps scaling because she keeps increasing that tentacle damage. And then with her next burst turn is, she deals basically even more than the last burst turn. Abyss Hymns. This is, if you know anything about G. Murphy, you know about Pot of Greed, draw 2. This is her Pot of Greed card. 0 cost, gain 2 Arithmetica, and draw 2 cards. Insane effect. As a support, huge benefits. But this card does have a drawback, which is definitely impactful if you aren't managing it well. After you play this, you suffer sacrifice equal to 5% of your max HP at the start of the next turn. So it doesn't happen immediately, so when you end your turn, you're not getting that sacrifice damage. It's the start of the next turn. So this does give you time to reduce it. And then Aftershock. Aftershock means when you discard it, you remove 5% of your max HP sacrifice stacks. So if you discard this card while it's in your hand, you lose 5%. If you use it, you gain 5%. So if you have one, you can play one, and then you can hold the other one, and it'll cancel itself out. Very powerful card. If you don't manage it well, that sacrifice stacks can creep up on you and start dealing a ton of damage. Her exalt here, Princess of Delusions, gain 115 shield. The shield is nice. You suffer sacrifice equal to 10% of your max HP at the start of the next turn. If you use Abyss Hymn twice and then this, that's 20% of your max HP you're losing right there. Inflict 15 stacks of Birth Ritual. Birth Ritual is the thing that whenever you deal damage to the enemy, they gain sacrifice stacks equal to 1% of the damage dealt. So 15 stacks of Birth Ritual would be 15% of the damage dealt. But you can keep stacking that if you have other forms of Birth Ritual. And then you do want to make sure you have your Rouse to further inflict sacrifice. And then deal 120 damage 5 times to the enemy with the highest HP, which enjoys a 150% tentacle bonus damage. So your exalt is sort of like your Waltz of Lemuria, but better in terms of it does a little bit of everything. It doesn't matter what stance you're in. But generally, if you're going to be using her exalt, you normally use her in red stance. So that is her skills. Her enlightens. All of them are insanely good. Waltz of Lemuria, the 3 costs, tentacle damage, shield generation, and final damage plus 10%, with an additional 0.2% increase for each point of Key Flare regen level. So she does scale off of Key Flare after this E1. Even before the E1, though, her card gave you 300% key flare regen. So you were going to be building key flare on her regardless, but this just gives you an additional incentive to build more key flare. Inverted pregnancy. Murphy's crit rate is plus 3% per tentacle. So she's scaling off of how many tentacles. And her crit damage scales 3% per 1% max HP value of sacrifice or delayed sacrifice. So however much sacrifice you have on you, that will increase your crit damage. So if you have 100% sacrifice, that would not be the best for you next turn, but if you kill the enemy, who cares? Then you would have 300% crit damage. So pretty powerful effect. Works really well with kind of the double-edged sword that she's got going on. And then with the tentacles, crit rate, this is great. You want to add more tentacles to get her crit rate going anyways. Profane Apocalypse. This is the Enlightened that adds that draw effect. Draw one Abyss Hymn when strike or defense is used. Takes effect once per turn. Very powerful, especially for the support version. You definitely want to get that because the Abyss Hymn for the support, Murphy, just... that card is nuts. So you want more of it. And then her Over Exalt. You inflict 5 more stacks of Birth Ritual, so it goes from 15 to 20. And then you generate 3 Waltz of Lemuria. That's the 3 cost. But it makes it 2 cost when it generates. And they come with Prepare and Exhaust. So you can hold them in your hand, and they will reduce every turn thereafter. Generally, if you're using the Over Exalt, you're trying to use as many Waltz of Lemuria as you can, so the Prepare Exhaust doesn't matter greatly, but it's definitely useful. One thing to note, we'll go over it a little bit later in the builds, what her preferred builds are, but when using her OE as a DPS, Blade of the Titans work really well because it can further reduce these 2 cost to 1 cost potentially, and when that happens, you can use all 3 Waltz of Lemurias for, 3 Arithmetica, 4 Arithmetica. It's not going to cost 6 Arithmetica if you have Blade of the Titans, which is really nice. And now we're going to go over... So her talent basically changes how tentacles work in Blue Team. If you've never played Blue Team, you don't have a preconceived notion of how tentacles work. But if you have played Blue before, you kind of understand. You change White stance. Every turn you get extra shield. When you're ready for damage, you change to Red stance. And then Blue stance is kind of the base stance. That's how normal Blue Team works. Here, you can only change to each stance once every 3 turns. So when you change to White stance, you can't change to White stance again for another 3 turns. Same thing when you change to Red stance, you have to wait 3 turns to change back to Red stance. They also have enhanced effects as well. So when she's in the team, the Aquir realm is the Divine realm. Tentacle damage is changed to 5% of the team's max HP. So with her on the team, you ideally want to increase your max HP because that it will scale your tentacle damage. Team damage amp plus 50% after expiration begins. Effect is doubled if it is pure. The tentacle gathering effect is removed. So Divine Realm Tentacle Stance features the following new effect. Tranquil Sea immediately generates shield equal to 25% of max HP, and tentacles will no longer attack at the turn end, 3-turn cooldown. So in normal realm, the tentacles would attack, and you'd get a little bit of shield, based on the damage that the tentacles were doing. But here, the tentacles are not attacking, so you don't get that damage. But the shield generated by White Stance is just huge. It's way bigger than the other White Stance. Divine Realm Raging Waves. Tentacle damage times 125% for the turn. After dealing active damage, one tentacle attacks. That's pretty similar. The damage part is a bit more. And then you lose one tentacle at turn end. That's kind of the same thing as before as well. 3 turn cooldown. Realm Mastery is counted as Divine Realm Acquire Mastery. Each point provides Tranquil Sea Stance more shield generation, and Raging Wave Stance more tentacle damage. Effect is doubled in Pure. So Realm Mastery gives you more shields and more damage. So she is very unique in that she changes a whole mechanic of Realm. And another unique thing about her is she gives the race, I don't have a good word for this, but Leorians all have a special effect when they're paired together. Depending on how many Leorians you have, and each Leorian has their own special effect. Her special effect is when you exalt, depending on how many Leorians there are, you gain a shield equal to max HP plus 6%, 15%, 30%. This is the max HP of the team. This is the shield. 50%, 125%, 250% of Murphy Fulbarn's defense after any Leorian Awakener uses an Exalt. This is a huge shield, very impactful. You can use it once per turn, and it's whenever any Leorian Awakener exalts, you get this effect. Some of the other ones, let's see if I can pull it up real quick. So Tulu is another Leorian, and then when he is on the team, all enemies receive 10%, 25%, or 50% more tentacle damage. With Miriam, increases tentacle damage dealt by all Awakeners by 10 to 20% when there are 1, 2, 3 other Leorian Awakeners in the team. The tentacle damage dealt by all Awakeners is increased by an additional 6%, 15%, or 30%. For Goliath, increase the base damage dealt by Goliath by 20 to 50%. Blade's Dominion increases the final damage dealt by Goliath by 5 to 10%. When there are 1, 2, 3 other Leorian Awakeners in the team, all Awakeners' strength generation is increased by 6, 15, or 30%. And then Pharos is the last Leorian. When there are 1, 2, 3 other Leorian Awakeners in the team, damage amplification plus 20%, 50%, or 100% extra damage amp. While 100% damage amp sounds really nice, and it is a good buff, it's not like you're dealing 100% more damage. That's not how damage amp works. But it is a really nice buff. So that is her kit, her wheels, her SR wheel, Uteri Somnia, +2 hand size, huge. It's unique. You can only have +2 is the max that you can get, but just that effect is great. The wielder's Key Flare regen and Exalt final damage and shield generation plus 20%. This is pretty nice. If you're using her as a DPS, it's not a huge deal. A lot of your damage is coming from your cards, but a decent amount of your damage does come from your shields. Switching to Tranquil Sea stance increases the wielder's alias by 30, 3 turn cooldown. So every time you go into white stance, you get 30 alias great effect. Switching to Raging Waves Red Stance inflicts 10 stacks of Birth Ritual on all enemies 3-turn cooldowns. And this obviously stacks with her kit as well. So by base, your Exalt gives 15. This would give another 10, so 25 Birth Ritual stacks. Sometimes, if you're playing her as a DPS, you might not need to run this depending on your other wheels, and you can put this on one of your support units on the comp because they could still benefit from the Alienist generation, and the Raging Waves, the 10 stacks, is still useful. Blue Ring Toxin is her SR wheel. Team Unique, the wielder Key Flare and Exalt Final Damage and Shield plus 8%. This is fine. It's just kind of gives her a little bit extra of what she already does, but there can be better options as a support. Wayward Ship is her personal posse. You gain 1 Arithmetica and apply 5 stacks of Birth Ritual to all enemies. And then if she's on the team, you draw 1 Waltz of Lemuria. That's her 3 cost. It's pretty good. She is a little versatile with her posse that she can use. She gains a lot of Key Flare, so you will be using your posse all the time. Her card's a little expensive, so a Mouse's Wisdom is a really good posse to use for her. I've seen people play Reunion's Wish as well. Return 1 command card from the discard pile. If Ramona is in the team, that effect doesn't matter. The next command card she plays this turn will take effect 2 times. But it's the return 1 command card from the discard pile, so you can grab back the draw 2 or even other useful cards from your teammates. Her posse isn't necessarily always her Wayward Ship. It is really good, but not the best. So we're going to go over a couple of teams. We're going to go over her Arc 1 composition first. Her Arc 1 Lemurian team is not great. So if you see some pure Lemurian teams, that's mainly for Arc 2. All those Soul Forge and Lemurian bonuses, none of them apply in Arc 1. So it's not really a great team there. But for Arc 2, this is kind of the standard composition here, with Thighs doing thigh stuff, increasing her, using more of her cards. You're most likely duping the 3 cost. Aegis is there just for vulnerable and stun, and Aegis is great as well, additional Key Flare. And then Murphy is there to help manage the sacrifice stacks, because with this comp, you are going to be wanting to use the draw 2, gain 2 all the time. And Murphy's 3 cost reduces your sacrifice stacks by half, which is really strong. So if you had 100% max sacrifice, that drops to 50%, which pretty powerful effect. And then if you had a couple, if you got it that high, you dropped it in half, and then you have a couple of these that will reduce it by 5% of your max HP. So they pair well with each other here. So if you're using G Murphy in Arc 1, this is what I would recommend. Something similar to this. Definitely Murphy to help with the sacrifice stacks. You don't have to do the mixed realm if you don't want, but I think for her, if you want to use her as DPS in Arc 1, this will probably be your best bet. We'll go over this comp here next. This is Arc 2. The next 2 comps are going to be Arc 2. And this is more of a Corpusant focused damage team, while she's mainly here for utility. But this is for kind of a discard comp. This works pretty well versus the arc to chapter 4 final boss, Coruscant's ability to deal damage through Fortitude on Aqua Awakeners allows her to deal huge amounts of damage to the boss here. And this comp just kind of pairs well with it. Kasaya could be Orita. You have a little bit of flexibility. Even Murphy technically could swap out, but it's just a very comfortable pick here. This, if you wanted to use Coruscant and G. Murphy, it is kind of a common team. It works in other chapters as well. It just really works really well in chapter 4. The gimmick there is sort of perfect for this comp. This here is going to be your standard Leorian team. G. Murphy and Miriam are the core of the comps. I would say don't change these two. But the other two here, Goliath or Pharaohs, can be any combination of Goliath, Pharaohs, or Tulu. So you could have G. Murphy, Miriam, Goliath, Tulu, Pharaohs, Tulu, Goliath, Pharaohs, whatever combination of these 3 units in the back are just fine. I have been enjoying this particular combination myself. One, these two are standards, which makes them a lot easier to get dupes with, while Tulu is an Arc 1 unit, and so being limited, just a little bit harder to get, and he doesn't necessarily make the team better. Pharaohs allows it to be more defensive, so you get a little bit more sustain, you get a little bit more shields, you get a little bit more utility with Pharaohs. With Tulu, you get more damage. So if you're going for more DPS, just big damage, big numbers, you're going to want Tulu Goliath as opposed to Pharaohs. I also do like a Mouse's Wisdom in this comp because you are using a lot of Arithmetica. The cards are pretty expensive. You also want to be rousing fairly often as well. And those rouses can be expensive themselves. So you want to get the Arithmetica to be able to play all the cards you want to play. In this comp here, Miriam is the unit you want to rouse first, and then G. Murphy. And then there are going to be turns where you have a ton of Key Flare. You can rouse either Goliath, Pharaohs in any order. If you have Tulu on the comp, you probably want to rouse Tulu third, and then Goliath or Pharaohs fourth, whichever one you have. But you will have the Key Flare to rouse all of them. Pharaohs here, especially with Birth of a Soul, is giving you a ton of shields. When you play the defense first time, you'll probably get like 200 plus shields here. You'll see in the gameplay I'll utilize this one. Goliath, this right here gives your strikes give a 100% chance to gain 1 Arithmetica cost. His exalt card that he creates, Blade's Dominion, counts as a strike. So if you overexalt and they cost 0 and you play one, it will actually, the first one will give you 1 Arithmetica. So that's pretty good. 0 cost, 1 Arithmetica, and then you can use that on G. Murphy's cards because they're super expensive. Miriam here is she's just an insane unit for G. Murphy. This isn't really a Miriam video, but if you don't know what she does, she has these special cards called rituals, and they flip between like Sacrament and Obsession. Sacrament will heal the whole team. Obsession gives Miriam 15 Aliamus, so she can battery herself. But this card right here, you choose one Awakener and you give them 50 alias just at base. But if you have 3 of these rituals, if you don't have her at E3, if you have her at E2, it would give 100 alias to one Awakener. This is 115 if you have her at E3. So she can give G. Murphy 100 alias. G. Murphy doesn't have a lot of self alias, and so this pairs so well together. Her rouse is just insane. You can use this 3 times. Every time you use it, it gives vulnerable and weakness on the enemy, which is, I mean, that effect is just so useful. And it also has retain and prep, and so if you don't play it, it reduces its cost by 3. Just Miriam and G. Murphy they were like designed together. They are perfectly paired. But that is going to go over it for the overview. If you want to see the gameplay video, you'll have to click on the next video where we'll use this comp exactly on a stage, and I'll show you kind of how the early game all the way to the final boss, how you want to play it. We will see you then. Have a good one. Peace.